Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Teacher Certification Course. It's great to see everyone's back again on this hot day. You can be seated if you're standing. And remember, we've been covering, Chapter 3, which is entitled Positive Communication Leads to Healthy Interactions. And I want to remind people that are tuning in over the internet. We have a lot of people tuning in all over the world. If you want to follow along in the course, in the book, go ahead and go to you're probably already there, at the Facebook official Peaceful Solution Facebook page. At the top, you'll see the manuals being offered there. I do believe there's still a drop-down menu. If you'll see the character unit, you might see a little drop-down menu that you have to click on to get the acceptance unit. I haven't been on there lately to verify that, but the book's there if you'll check, so you can follow along. It's helpful to hear the Peaceful Solution, but it's double helpful to hear it and read it. Okay, so last class, we went over pages. Well, we went over a few pages, but we landed in respect, and we were looking at the do's and don'ts of respect on page 52. And just to kind of recap just a little bit, I don't want to go too far back, but it talks about healthy interactions on the top of page 52 with others also means having mutual respect. And everybody wants respect. Okay, and everybody deserves respect, right? And that's something that was really an eye opener to me when I first started learning the Peaceful Solution, because I always would see all the influences around us that tell us, you have to earn respect, or if you don't give respect, you don't get respect, and we were bombarded constantly with those ideas from different people, many of them in high authority. So we believed it. We actually believed, well, I don't have to respect that person if I don't feel like it, or if I'm angry with them, or if they've done something that I feel they've done to disrespect me, or if I just don't like how they look, or etc. But it's just not the case. We owe everyone respect, even if they're not respecting us. That's that's one of the hardest things. Even if they're not giving us respect, if they're being, aggressive toward us, or they're being mean to us in some way, we still owe them respect in return, because how else will they learn respect unless they see it coming from us, right? And two wrongs make a right? No, they don't, right? So, we don't want to lower ourselves to that standard. Okay, we have a higher standard in the Peaceful Solution because we're learning that everyone deserves respect. So it says everyone wants respect, and they want their feelings, dreams, thoughts, and ideas, everything that makes them who they are, treated with care and concern. Everybody needs to know that they matter to someone else. We all want to be accepted. That's what this unit's about, this acceptance unit in the Peaceful Solution. We all want to be accepted. Having respect for others and receiving their respect in return are ways in which we make our interactions positive. And we went over the first three of the do's and don'ts of respect on page 52. We learned that we need to use appropriate language. We need to eliminate the foul language, because foul language is just foul. It stinks. It's rotten. It's obscene. It doesn't show intelligence. Like it says, if you can string the words, string the bleeps, one bleep after another, it doesn't show intelligence. It actually gives us an idea that we can go to a dictionary and try to find some words to express ourselves rather than using the foul language. And then number 2, we learned that we shouldn't name call, put people down, or mock people. Calling someone names or using racial slurs does not explain how you feel. Wars are started over those kind of things. People have been killed, seriously hurt. Reputations have been damaged, etc. Using racial slurs. It causes hurt feelings and puts others on the defensive. Treat others the way you want to be treated. You know, the golden rule. You know, one thing I remember reading in The Peaceful Solution once, it said, if you're ever in doubt as to how to treat someone in any situation, think about how you would want to be treated in that situation. If you're ever in doubt as to how to treat someone or how to handle a situation, think about how you would want it handled if you were on the other end. You know, do unto others, it says. Okay, so number 4 is where we're going to pick up here on the do's and don'ts. It says, do not, number 3, we went over the asking permission. Do ask permission before touching or borrowing someone's property. And we went over the first 5 pillars of the Peaceful Solution program, you know, ownership, respect, the importance of asking, self-control, and do not steal, which we need to teach those 5 pillars in the Peaceful Solution so people understand what stealing actually is and how it damages interactions, healthy interactions, when we don't do something as simple as ask permission before we touch or borrow something. I remember learning in the elementary series, you know, way back in kindergarten unit or the first grade unit, something as simple as, you know, marking your property with your name so no kind of conflict will arise in the first place. You know how many times you've seen people arguing and saying, that's my book. No, it's my book. No, it's my book. Well, if someone would have wrote their name in the book, would there be an argument? Would there be room for an argument? Absolutely not. So something that simple can actually prevent wars, prevent fighting. Something that simple, but it's not taught out here, for the most part. So when we read these things in the Peaceful Solution, they're kind of like, boing, frying pan. Wow, that never even thought of that. That makes a lot of sense. So stealing can really affect the way people feel about each other. And I've told you before, I've lost friends because of stealing from them, okay? Where stealing exists, trust does not, and trust is necessary for those positive interactions that we need to have with each other. All right, so number 4, do not touch anyone in any way that makes him or her feel uncomfortable. We're going to go over this. We're going to spend a little time here because this is something very important, especially in the junior high, okay? Something takes place in that transition from primary to secondary school. All right? Primary school, it seems like the teachers are really always there to remind you not to touch, Don't touch anyone. Keep your hands and feet to yourself. Right? If they see any touching or anything going on, they're usually right there on top of it, and they put a stop to it. Why did they do that? That's what we're going to discuss tonight. We're going to hear a little bit about the why, because a lot of people might think, well, what's wrong with me touching that person if I feel like touching them? What's that harming? What's that hurting? Well, we're going to find out. It's not enough to tell children not to do something, or teenagers not to do something. We really need to give them the whys, so that way they can be wise about the whys. Touching someone inappropriately is called sexual harassment. And by the way, that's any age. I don't care how old you are. You can sexually harass somebody in primary school, secondary school, high school, college, workplace, etc. It's all sexual harassment, as we're going to learn tonight. In addition to touching, sexual harassment also involves making comments or suggestions of a sexual nature. It is disrespectful and conveys a lack of acceptance. Can you turn your page back to page 3 real quick? We're going to look at this thought cloud on the top of page 3 to remind ourselves about this acceptance and how making these kind of comments and suggestions conveys a lack of acceptance. At the top of page 3, there's a thought cloud that says, to reduce intolerance, regard others with the same care and compassion that you regard yourself. the peaceful solution. That word regard, it means respect. Regard means respect. They're both interchangeable. So which means we need to learn to regard and accept ourselves first. Most importantly, ourselves first, because if we don't learn to regard, respect, and accept ourselves first, it's going to be difficult to show that to somebody else, right? But remember this acceptance. We have to accept ourselves. And that's what chapter 1 was about, accepting me, accepting you. And remember that acceptance, as presented in the peaceful solution, means to willingly acknowledge the positive characteristics about yourself and others. Acceptance means that understanding there are aspects of your life that you can and cannot change, etc. So let's go back to page 52. It says, it's disrespectful and conveys a lack of acceptance. It says loud and clear that someone is not worthy of respect. And didn't we already establish who's worthy of respect? Everyone. Everyone's worthy of it. Even though they might not do something to show us respect, they're still worthy of that respect from us. You know, we don't have the right to disrespect anybody just because they're showing, that disrespect to us. It says, aside from an unhealthy way to interact with others, it's also against the law and could get you into serious trouble. So, hands off. Hands off. Can you put up this picture, this first picture? Now, this is from Teens Health. This is the teen page, by the way, so this is right up, it should be right up their alley. It says sexual harassment and bullying can happen in person or online. But no matter where they happen, sexual harassment and bullying are not okay. It says, there is no excuse for behaviors like these, and they are not the fault of the person who's being harassed or bullied. I want you to think about that for a minute. Let's say that someone's dressed provocatively. They're dressed scantily. They're not dressed, fully and proper. Does that give us the right to stare at them or make comments about about their physique or anything like that? Does that give us the right to do that? To harass or bully somebody because of that? Or to make, underhanded comments or snide remarks about that person? No, it doesn't. Even if they're not dressed properly, well, the reason they're not is probably because they haven't been taught yet about proper conduct. So we can't, we shouldn't be harassing them or bullying anybody anyway. But it doesn't give someone the right to sit there and, whistle at them or, make rude comments or jokes, etc. Can you put the picture back up? It says, sexual harassment and bullying include things like making sexual jokes, comments, or gestures, spreading sexual, says rumors, spreading sexual rumors in person, by text, or social media. And that's a big problem today. People spreading all kinds of things about other people, including their pictures of them in compromising positions, so to speak. Posting sexual comments, pictures, or videos. Making or sending sexual pictures or videos. Asking someone for naked pictures of themselves. These are all forms of sexual harassment, okay? And as we're going to learn here in a few minutes, that could cost you a hefty price in more ways than one, okay? Not to include your reputation and other things. It says also asking for sex or offering to have sex. This should not be named among, the students out in the schools. It shouldn't be going on. Now, it is going on, okay? Sex is a huge influence on teenagers and adults. Why? Because they're bombarded with it constantly, in the TV, the movies, the video games, the billboards as they're driving down the street. It's everywhere. It's literally everywhere. So they're, even the checkout stand at the grocery store, you see these magazines, People magazine or different magazines, and they got, You know, they're into everybody's business. Who so-and-so's dating, who so-and-so's just left or divorced or whatever. People scantily clad, etc. You know, these things are everywhere, so people are bombarded with it, so it's on their mind quite frequently. Okay, let's go to the second picture. So we just saw that there's verbal harassment, you know, making the comments. There's physical harassment, the touching. And then there's the visual harassment, you know, with the showing pictures or videos, or, you know, uploading videos to online on Facebook, or, you know, these other Instagram or Snapchat. I'm not really too sure about any of the other ones, how those operate, but I do know that you can post things about other people. It's not something that should be done. Okay, these are all something that we should not be doing. Okay, now let me talk about this next. I'm not going to show the picture yet, but when I was living in Laredo, Texas, at every school, and it was district-wide in both districts, you're talking about each district had about, you know, 50 or 60,000 children in the district. And and I'm talking about in the middle schools and the junior highs in particular, they had this ritual. I can't say the name of it. I can only tell you a donkey. Okay, you'll have to figure out the rest. They called it Grab Donkey Friday, where they would go down the hallway at the school or in the classroom, and they would actually grab someone's behind, pinch them, and it didn't matter if it was men or boys or girls. It was a ritual. It was something that all the schools did. Okay? And when I was asking the students about it, I was like, is this actually something? They said, yeah, it's actually something we do every Friday. And I'm like, really? And the teachers know about it? Yeah, they know about it. I said, they let you do it? Well, some of them might say something, but for the most part, it's a ritual. It's something we do. I'm like, okay. So I got to thinking about it, and I thought, man, I need to start probably, you know, letting them know how dangerous that actually is. Because to them, it's just fun. It's fun and games. It's something that they do as a practice. What's another name for practice? It would be like well, I said ritual, but it's just something they do. It's a custom. Let's call it a custom. Well, I want to show you that, and I thought this must be just in Laredo, like this must just be going on in Laredo, Texas, but I found out that's not the case. Can you put up the next picture for the class? Okay, so this is from Philadelphia. This is the Philly Voice. This is Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And notice I put a donkey there. They put the actual word there, but I had to put a little donkey in there to block out that word. You can figure it out yourself. It says, students report inappropriate touching as classmates mark National Grab Donkey Day at Abington Junior High. All right. The quote from the article says, one of the parents told the Philly Voice, quote, Thursday was really bad, what children told me, especially for the girls. Parents of children relayed on Facebook that their daughters were placing folders over their behinds to try and avoid being touched as they moved through the hallways. Now, that might seem funny or silly or, you know, laughable to people that haven't been taught the peaceful solution, but that's actually sexual harassment. And it doesn't matter what gender is doing it, whether it's boys touching girls or girls touching boys, it's all the same. That's actually against the law. That's sexual assault. Okay? But nobody's calling it sexual assault, right? You know, you can assault someone with your tongue. Did you know that? You can threaten somebody with your tongue, and you can actually be charged with assault for threatening somebody. So it says, these students, this is something that goes on everywhere. It's not, these things are going on all over the United States. And the main reasons why it's taking place? Lack of education. Okay? Let's go to the next slide. Here, I'm going to show you where they're getting their education from. This is where they're getting it. The Urban Dictionary tells you that April 11th is National Grab Donkey Day. Of course, most schools, they do it every week. They have it one day out of the week that they do it. It may differ from school district to school district. But this is what's taking place in our schools because the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program is not being taught, and children have no concept of ownership. That I can't just put my hand on somebody. I can't do that. It's not appropriate. It's disrespectful. All right. Now, let's talk a little bit about, other than the fact that it's disrespectful, it's against the law, it's very disgusting behavior, right? What's the problem with it? Other than that, if that's not enough. Can we put up that next picture? So have you ever heard of pathogens? All right. If you haven't heard of a pathogen, let's look at the definition. It says, in biology, a pathogen, it's from the Greek word pathos, which means suffering. Pathos, suffering. And the other word, genes, or genus, which means producer of. So pathogen means producer of suffering. It says, that's what it means in its oldest and broadest sense. A pathogen is any organism, that means any living thing, that can produce disease. So a pathogen is a living organism that can produce disease. A pathogen may also be referred to as an infectious agent or simply a germ. Now, we all know that public schools and public places are a breeding ground for these things. One child gets sick at school, next thing you know, everybody's sick at school. And I remember asking my elementary teacher, she used to tell us, one of my elementary teachers, she used to tell us, one of the reasons why we don't want you touching is because you don't know if that other person's sick, what you might catch. And I was thinking, like a cold or something like that. And, but, they didn't go into the deeper details. There's many, many things that you can catch from people. What I find interesting about the definition of the word pathogen is it says, remember what it means. It means a producer of suffering. And it talks about any living organism or any living thing can be a producer of suffering, including people. You can actually be a human pathogen and not even realize you're a human pathogen, creating suffering by your behavior. That's why we really got to educate in the Peaceful Solution to show the why of why you shouldn't be touching. I remember watching a few years ago when I first learned more about pathogens. I remember watching it was Good Morning America, and they did a segment on clothing and pathogens on clothing at the clothing store. That you go to JCPenney or any kind of clothing store to buy clothes, you can actually catch a deadly pathogen. Did you know that? Just from touching the clothes or putting them on. What they were saying in the report was that people come to the clothing stores, they put on clothes, they try them on, and a lot of these people have diseases. They have diseases in their body, whether it's STDs or other pathogens, they have these things, these germs, these viruses in their body, and when they put the clothes on to try them on, they cling to those clothing. The other thing they said they were doing was, people go to the store, they would call it renting clothing, renting clothes, where girls and men would come in, and they would mainly women, because women like to buy outfits and try them on and wear them for a while and see how they look. It's kind of like buying a car to see if you like the car, and then if you don't like it, you trade it in. Well, they do the same thing with clothing. They buy clothing with the intent sometimes of just thinking, I'm just going to wear this to the party this weekend, and then I'm going to return it on Monday and get my money back, and then I'm going to buy another set of clothes for the next weekend, for the next party I go to. Well, guess what? They wear those clothing to the party, and let's just say that certain secretions and fluids from the body get into those clothing because of certain actions, and then they take those back to the store, and do you think that the store is going to wash them before they put them back on the shelf to resell them? They actually showed clothing that was hung right back. They had hidden cameras that showed it all. The clothing was put right back out there, including underwear and panties with stains on them, and resold them to an unsuspecting person that put them on. It blew my mind. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe that was taken. I didn't believe it could be on clothing. Well, the children don't know about this. Okay, they have no idea about. I didn't even know about this. Okay, so that's why we need to educate people, to show them, look, just by touching someone's clothing, you can actually get a pathogen. Here's another thing you need to think about. Taking things without permission. What's that called? It's called stealing. Okay? Now, granted, in the grocery store, you can go and you can touch things, because by virtue of them putting it on the shelf and inviting you in and saying, hey, come on and buy these things, you've got permission to come and touch those things. But you don't have permission to eat them, do you? Before you buy them? Now, let me ask you a question. Is there not always a consequence for bad behavior, for negative behavior? What do you think? What does a peaceful solution teach? Yes, there's always a consequence for negative behavior. When we don't practice a peaceful solution in the smallest way, there's always going to be a consequence. Okay? We might not see it. Do you see pathogens? Do you see germs and bacteria, deadly bacteria? Do you see it? No, you don't see it. So you might not see this consequence when you go into the grocery store and you look at the grapes and think, hey, I think I'm going to try one of those grapes, to see if I want to buy them or not. Right? And you pop that grape in your mouth that someone has already been touching, that probably used the restroom before they came to the store and didn't wash their hands. Because I don't know if you know this, but when you go into any grocery store and you go into a public restroom, they usually have a sign hanging there saying, employees, please wash your hands before you go back to work. Or, please wash hands after using a restroom. Why do they have to have a sign to tell you that? I can tell you right now, when I used to use public restrooms, I would hear a toilet flush, and I'd be at the sink. There'd be one sink, and I'd be washing my hands. I would hear the toilet flush, and then I'd hear the door shut. And I'm like, wait a minute. That person didn't even wash their hands. Unless they washed them in the toilet. And then they went out there, and what did they do? In the grocery store or in the clothing store? Well, they started squeezing the Charmin, right? Or putting their hands on the bananas or the cherries or the grapes. Because they usually don't just, look at them. They want to touch them. They want to feel them. They want to see if they're firm, So guess what goes onto that grape or that orange or that banana or whatever it is you're buying? Yeah, the pathogens, the bacteria, the harmful bacteria. And you're going to, now here's the consequence. So you pop that grape in your mouth without buying it? Man. Well, there's your consequence. You didn't see it, did you? But it sure tasted yummy, didn't it? But this is why we got to really be educated, and we got to understand that these things are very dangerous, you know. In fact, you should, you know, when you buy fruits and vegetables, you shouldn't just, you know, eat them when you get them home. You need to wash them off. You need to make sure they're clean. You know, people have been touching and handling these things. Pathogens are everywhere. And more so nowadays, STDs can be transferred through touch, saliva. You know, people are in the store, they're talking and they're spitting all over the vegetables and the fruits while they're on their phone. They're usually on their phone when they're talking. Okay, so let me get back on this because I want to show you something else. Can you put up the next picture? All right, so it says pathogens can be transmitted a few ways depending on the type. They can be spread through skin contact, bodily fluids, airborne particles, contact with feces, and touching a surface touched by an infected person. Okay, so notice, somebody can just touch something and infect that surface, whether it's clothing, whether it's a table, whether it's whatever. That's why in schools, you know, you see some teachers are onto that, and they'll spray the desks down after every session. They'll spray them down, they'll wipe them down, because they realize there's germs that people, you know, from touching things. And that's why we always tell children, keep your fingers out of your mouth. Don't put your fingers in your mouth, you know, because you've been touching things. And when you put those things in your mouth, you put your fingers in your mouth, you could be taking in a pathogen into your body unknowingly because you can't see them, remember? Okay, so on here, there's this article here about 10 ways that pathogens spread. We're going to look at the fourth way that it showed us. It showed us pathogens spread through animals. And actually said that they said the number one thing that spread pathogens was pigs. I go figure. But number 4 said, spread of pathogens by humans is a difficult problem to address. Humans can carry pathogens mechanically on clothes. You see that? You can carry pathogens on your clothes, your clothing. So this grabbing people at the school, grabbing any part of their body, you could be actually getting a consequence right then, and you're already receiving a consequence because you're actually stealing when you do that. There's already a consequence, but you could be having a very deadly consequence from touching somebody. Okay, it says humans can carry pathogens mechanically on clothes, skin, hair, or boots, or internally in their respiratory or digestive system. Controlling this type of spread requires limits on people's movements and access, it says, and that's from www.dupont.com. Very interesting. Now, I only gave you those few examples, you know, of how easy it is to actually contract or, you know, pick up some kind of pathogen through touching, you know, and the ways, certain habits people have when they go to the grocery store, etc. So we need to pass these things on to the young people. Pass them on, you know, let them know that, hey, this is what's lurking out there. They can't see it. You know, remember what we learned in the first chapter of, I think it was the first chapter of The Peaceful Solution, and the character unit, where it talked about more than meets the eye. You can look at something and you're not going to see what's there. You know, when you look at a person, they can look perfectly healthy and normal. You're not going to know they have an STD. Okay? And nowadays with makeup, boy, they can do everything to hide what they got, that they got an STD. Okay? Unless you've been trained to be able to tell if somebody has an STD, like they're having an outbreak and you can actually see it, You don't know what's out there, but I can tell you right now, the last I heard, it was 6 or 7 years. I know 370 million people worldwide per year contract an STD that they know about that go to a doctor. That's the CDC that's saying that, the Centers for Disease Control. 370 million people. Guess what? That's over 1 million people a day are contracting an STD that they know about. Now, how many people do they not know about? With the morals the way they are today, how many people do you think will have them tomorrow? Then the next day? So we really got to guard ourselves, and we really got to guard the children, and we really got to educate them and show them these things, or they're not. It's just not going to make any sense to them. Now, there's another reason why sexual harassment is not a great idea. Can you put up that next? Well, because sexual harassment can be very costly monetarily too, as we're going to see here. Do you know what the highest award was that a jury gave to somebody for sexual harassment? For a man sexually harassing a woman in a workplace? A whopping $168 million. I'll say that again. It wasn't 168,000. It was 168 million, and it was awarded to Annie Chapurian, who filed suit against Catholic Healthcare West in 2012. 168 million, and that judgment was upheld. They did not reduce the amount. That woman became very wealthy. Now, granted, most companies, this was a big company, so that's why they were able to get that much money. Most smaller businesses, you can't ask for that much money. You can only get, I believe, up to $300,000, and it depends on how many employees that business has, is how much money they'll award you. But these are big corporations that got big money that had to pay out. Let's put it back up again, please. We had Ashley Alford versus Aaron's Rents, furniture rental store, $40 million. And I can't tell you what was being done to the young lady to be harassed. Some of the things weren't really big in the eyes of most people. You'd think, well, that doesn't seem like that big of a deal. That seems like that goes on everywhere. Well, it does, but some people don't put up with it. Some people will actually take you to court, even if you put your hand on them. Just put your hand on them. You see that picture? Please put the picture. Leave it up, please. Do you see that picture there, that man putting his hand on that woman? He's probably just thinking, hey, how you doing today? How's your work coming? And he puts his hand on the woman, and you see her reaction? Like, why do you got your hand on me? Why are you touching me? You don't have my permission to be touching me. You see that reaction? That's somebody that understands that, wait a minute. She understands something about ownership. You don't just put your hand on me like that. That action right there can cost you a lot of money. Just that one thing right there, putting your hand on somebody. That's why we got to learn early on that this can be very costly to our health and costly to our wallet. The third one that I saw was 6 female workers versus Ralph's grocery store. $30 million. Split between 6 girls, I guess, that were sexually harassed. And then the last one, Gretchen Carlson versus Roger Ailes. Now, Roger Ailes, he recently passed away. He was the CEO of Fox Entertainment. He paid $20 million. And I read up that Fox actually has paid over $100 million in sexual harassment suits just in the last few years. As a matter of fact, Bill O'Reilly, one of their biggest, I think he had a show called The O'Reilly Factor. He was accused of sexual harassment. He settled out for $32 million, which is a drop in the bucket to him because he was generating over $350 million a year in advertising for Fox News. Okay? And even after that, they decided to hire him back. But then he I think something occurred and he's no longer there. Okay, so enough about that. Are you convinced that you should probably keep your hands to yourself? Okay, and what I want you to do is take some of that information and, and share it with your students because they don't know these things. Let's look at the next one, number 5. It says, do allow others to have their opinions. Remember, we're talking about the do's and don'ts of respect. Do allow others to have their own opinions. Even if someone's opinion is different from yours, you can agree to disagree. If you do not agree with someone's beliefs, you should still treat him with respect. Everybody has a belief. Everyone believes something. Okay? I kind of look at it like different shades of skin, right? Why is it that a white person could look at a colored person and think, wow, he's different, because he's that color? Well, don't you think that a colored person could look at a white person and think the same thing? Like, well, he must be different. He's white. So why can we look at other people's beliefs and go, wow, that other person believes something else? Well, that other person's probably thinking the same thing about you. That person believes something else. So, right? Everybody believes something, right? Okay. But should we harass them, disrespect them, call them names, and not accept them just because their beliefs are different? I mean, if you were trying to win them over to your belief, would you win them over by racial slurs? Or going to their house and, standing out there and burning a cross on their lawn or something? Is that going to win them over to your side? I mean, come on, really? So, remember, everybody has different opinions, different beliefs. So treat them with respect. Treat them the way you would want to be treated because of your belief. You have a belief, so treat them the way you want to be treated with your belief. It's really that simple. Remember, if you're ever in doubt as to how to treat somebody, just think about how would I want to be treated in that situation. If I believed that, how would I want to be treated? I didn't say you have to go to their house and have dinner with them or anything like that. What I said is treat them with respect. Treat them like a human being. That shows acceptance. Now, at the bottom of page 52, it says, bad scenes and hurt feelings are never forgotten. They are always like dark shadows between what could have been close friends. So let's turn now to let's LP3E, and we're going to look at step 7 here. It says, have students turn to the section Building Relationships found on page 53 and 54 and read about the importance of building positive moral relationships. Explain to students that healthy interactions are based on positive communication and respect. Healthy interactions, when nurtured, can lead to strong, positive moral relationships. And I'm going to go ahead and stop there and go ahead. We'll turn back over to page 53. And at the top it says, don't give respect to get respect. Give respect because it's the right thing to do. The peaceful solution. Now, how do you know it's the right thing to do? How do we know anything's right? How do we know if it's right? Because you'll hear all the time, well, what's right and what's wrong? What is right? What is wrong? Well, right in the peaceful solution is defined as if it doesn't bring harm to you, anybody else, or the environment, or someone's property, it's right. Okay? But remember this. Sometimes we might think something's right because we don't think we're bringing any harm. That's where this education comes in, like I just showed you about popping a grape in your mouth. You might not think there's anything wrong with that. You might think it's right because, hey, you want to try it before you buy, right? Yeah, but what if everybody came into Walmart that day and decided to try a grape? 2,000 people try a grape. Is there going to be any grapes left? No. You just can't do that. It's stealing. Unless you buy it first, it doesn't belong to you. Okay? So remember, the right thing is it doesn't bring anything any kind of harm to anyone, including yourself, property, and the environment. But get educated. That's the top peaceful solution trait. Building relationships. It says a relationship is built when mutual interaction connects two or more people as belonging or working together. Although there are many types of relationships, they all result from communication and interaction. Some relationships are personal while others are professional. A personal relationship involves two or more people who know each other well and are comfortable around each other. The relationships that you share with your family or close friends are examples of personal relationships. A professional relationship is more formal. And that word formal, you need to tell this to your students, they probably don't know what formal means. It means to meet the requirement or rules for the event or circumstance. It's kind of like you wouldn't say, "Hey, dude," to your dad, right? You wouldn't say, "What's up, dude?" to your teacher at school, right? You would treat them more formally, Mr., Mrs., right? You might say that to your friends, "Hey, what's up?" right? But you wouldn't do that to the authorities. So you make that transition. You understand that, hey, I'm talking to somebody who's in a higher position. I got to be more careful about how I speak. That doesn't mean we don't show respect to one another. We should at all times. What I'm saying is, that we normally will talk with our friends a little different than we do with the adults. So, for example, the relationships you share with your teachers or boss are examples of professional relationships. So your teacher at school, that's called a professional relationship because they're there to teach you, okay? Or your boss at work, that's a professional relationship. Now, rules. Oh, man, right? Rules. Why are there rules? There's rules everywhere, isn't there? Now, there's even rules in relationships. Wow, right? I thought the rules were just something they posted in the school, no cell phones, keep quiet, raise your hand. Man, there's rules everywhere, isn't there? It says, whether you're aware of it or not, all relationships, both professional and personal, have rules or guidelines that govern behavior and interaction. Many workplaces and most schools have a code of conduct that states there must be verbal and physical respect for others at all times. That would eliminate what? Grab Donkey Thursday or, National Grab Donkey Day. That would be done. That would be eliminated in the minds of the people because they would understand that there has to be verbal and physical respect for other people at all times. There's no special day that you can touch somebody without permission. Where do we get that idea? Urban Dictionary, right? Or because we saw other people do it at school, we thought it was acceptable. And because the teacher didn't say anything, they might feel too overpowered or too overwhelmed because everyone's going to do it anyway, right? Can't control 2,000 children walking down the hallway, right? So they feel like, it's not even worth telling them because they're just going to do it anyway. That's how some teachers feel. I understand the feeling. But we should still say something, teachers. If we want to be teachers of the peaceful solution, we need to tell people this. We need to remind them. Children just need to be reminded, when they make that transition into middle school, they tend to forget no touching, keep your feet to yourself, no holding hands, no doing any of those kind of things. Okay? They tend to forget, so they need to be reminded. All right, so it says, relationships such as those between teacher and student or doctor and patient are professional, and the rules governing their behavior are meant to keep people from being abused and mistreated. When the rules that govern personal relationships are compromised, the result is also abuse that could range from verbal to physical and sexual. And rules that are compromised, it's like when you accept standards that are lower than what's acceptable or desired. Okay, I'll say that again. When the rules that govern personal relationships are compromised, or somebody in that relationship accepts standards that are lower than what's acceptable or desired, then that relationship becomes compromised and the result is abuse that could range from verbal to physical and sexual. Sexual behavior between family members, for example, is not only immoral, but also devastating. It violates the bond of trust that must exist between members of the same family. Now, again, you're getting into an area here with the students. You got to remind them what the word immoral means, first of all. Okay, go to page 8 in the character unit if you have it. We'll start with that, because we got to remind them. You're not going to have, probably won't have your character unit right there, at that time, but you can remind them what they learned on page 8 about moral. A moral value is like a line that divides right behavior or wrong behavior from right behavior. And down at the third paragraph, it says, an immoral attitude toward life consists of behavior that devalues, belittles, hurts, and takes from others both emotionally and physically. Behaviors that include name-calling, teasing, bullying, and discriminating cause others to feel inferior and disregard their worth as human beings. And then look at the last paragraph on page 8. Those who have an immoral attitude toward human life often direct acts of cruelty toward those who are weaker or unable to defend themselves, as in the case of abuse towards children or the elderly. Every year, countless children are physically, emotionally, and sexually abused. This abuse results in lifelong emotional scars, permanent physical injuries, and in some cases, death. Okay, so back to page 53. Sexual behavior between family members is not only immoral, but it's devastating. Devastating means it can destroy a life. It can destroy someone's mentally, physically, genetically. What do I mean? If you know, immoral means it brings harm to somebody. Not only right then and there, but it can ripple outward and it can affect future generations. Can we go to the next slide? I want to show you something about what's called incest. You've probably heard of incest. It's relationships between immediate family members, like brother, sister, mother, son, etc. All you have to do to understand this is to read history to find out about this, to see what it causes, okay? And that's where you have to direct your students to look. Just give them examples. Here's one example. It's called inbreeding. Brothers and sisters having sexual relations, or close relatives, grandchildren with grandparents, etc. It says the ancient Egyptian royal families were almost expected to marry within the family, as inbreeding was present in virtually every dynasty. Pharaohs were not only wed to their brothers and sisters, but they were also double niece marriages, where a man married a girl whose parents were his own brother and sister. And why did they do that? To keep the power in the family. They didn't want to give that power up to anybody else outside of Egypt or the Egyptian royal dynasty line. They didn't want to give that power up, so they kept it within the family. Of course, there's a problem with that. Let's see what the problem with that is. Okay, remember, you can't just tell a child don't do it, or you can't just tell them it's immoral and it brings harm without showing them how it brings harm. Go to the next slide. Y'all heard of King Tut, right? He was called the Boy King. He had a number of illnesses and disorders, including a deformed foot caused by a degenerative bone disease that forced him to walk with a cane. Now, mind you, this was a young boy. He also had a cleft palate. A cleft palate, where the lips got that cleft, or it can even be a hole in the roof of the mouth on the inside. Remember, that's a mask you're looking at. That's not his face. That's a mask, okay? He had a cleft palate, and they know because they found his mummified remains. They had his face. They could see his face, right? Part of it. He had a cleft palate and a curved spine and was probably weakened by inflammation and problems with his immune system. King Tut's problems that were related to inbreeding most likely contributed to the boy's death, but were not the immediate cause. On top of everything else, he had a badly broken right leg and a bad case of malaria. This, combined with his other underlying health problems, is likely what killed King Tut. It says the pharaoh did not successfully produce a successor, and that line died out. In fact, the last pharaoh was Cleopatra, was a woman. That and when Greece took over in Egypt, when the Grecians and Macedonians took over in Egypt, they continued that same practice. Marriages within the immediate family, all the way to Cleopatra, the last pharaoh. Okay? This went on. Let's look at the next slide. Now let's look in England. This was a practice that went on, not in England, but in Spain. It says the Habsburgs ruled Spain for 184 years until the death of King Charles II in 1700. Charles II was a physically and mentally impaired individual who was the product of generations of inbreeding. In other words, incest within the family. He was unable to produce offspring and thus effectively ended the dynasty. For a powerful royal family such as the Spanish Habsburgs, inbreeding can impact not just the family, but history itself. In the case of the Spanish Habsburgs, they literally bred themselves out of existence. You see that? They destroyed their entire family line. They disappeared because of this conduct, this behavior. It says, this is ironic given the reason the family married within their own ranks in the first place was to maintain power and control within the family. What the inbreeding actually accomplished was the destruction of that family. Okay? That's why it's immoral conduct. And notice that picture of, can you put the picture back up, please? Notice that portrait of Charles II. You see his jaw? That's what's called the Habsburg jaw. If you look at their family photos, they had a jaw that was so messed up that they couldn't even keep their mouth closed. His wife had said, and I don't mean to belittle the man, this is not his fault. Somebody taught them to do this. Somebody taught them to do these things to keep power in the family. That's not his fault. Okay? But it's said in history he was so deformed and ugly that his wife was scared of him. Okay, this is how bad it was. Okay, now the last slide. This is from Psychology Today about trauma incest. Incest is a highly damaging form of abuse that most often results in PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. It says how incest post-traumatic stress disorder manifests itself can result in a variety of coping mechanisms like self-injury, like cutting yourself. This is what people that had gone through this with family members, this is what can take place to them. Self-injury, substance abuse, eating disorders, issues with dissociation, meaning they can become multiple personality. Okay, they start having mental breakdowns. And promiscuity. This is what can take place when these things that we're reading about right here, when this and you know what's one of the worst things? Who are we told to go to when somebody violates us? Our parents. If our parents are violating us, it's horrible. Okay, that's why we've really got to teach and educate people of the damage these kind of things does. And right now I'm out of time, so the next teacher will pick up on page 53 in the third paragraph, and the next class is going to be on 8/25/21, Wednesday, 8/25/21 at 5:30 Central Standard Time. Okay. And you all been a great class tonight, and keep coming. The Peaceful Solution is a wonderful program. Where else can you get this kind of information, right? Have a great evening. We'll see you next time.